Hello, this is Peter Stewart. Thank you for listening to today's episode of my Lil podcast, bringing you information for free about how to get a better broadcast podcast and video voice, short daily tips on articulation and presentation and intonation, which is what we're talking about at the moment, have done for the past couple of weeks. Another couple of weeks on this before we move on to another topic to help you get a better broadcast podcast and video voice. And yesterday, at the end of the show, I was talking about subtlety and nuance with lifting. I said, you don't need to batter your listeners' ears with a push of projection or a volume of voice by the same amount every single time there's new information and a contrast. Yeah, so today, shades of colour. I'm not using the words emphasis or stress because very often you don't use emphasis or stress when you're trying to highlight a word with intonation. Yeah? I didn't use emphasis or stress when I spoke that previous sentence. I subtly lifted some words. I didn't emphasise lifted, did I? I didn't stress it. I just lifted it slightly, gave it a bit of colour. Yeah, highlighted it a little bit. So the shades of colour in your vocal palette. In your vocal palette, you slightly colour new information. You give slightly more colour to the first part of contrasting information and slightly more again to the second part of contrasting information. And that's because you've got to give credit to your audience. They understand that there is a pattern in the emerging explanation of what you're saying, that you're going to mention everyone by name and the locations and times from my episode and example a couple of days ago. You just need to bring subtleties to the differences. So let's go back to some previous examples from a few days ago. Yeah. So here we go with one of those examples. Remember this one? I think it's better to go by plane rather than by train. You slightly colour plane, but you colour train more. Would you like chicken, fish, or pasta? You colour by increasingly subtle degrees each of those foods on offer, because they're each new bits of information, but then they're contrasting with each other. I think it's better to go by plane rather than by train. Would you like chicken, fish, or pasta? Yeah, slightly different on each of those. You'll hear that this pattern of intonation is what you use naturally day by day. Let's look at an example from a voiceover script which introduces another small point that I want to talk about today. Now, it's from an advert for a firm of solicitors which specialises in wills. So, if you'd like us to write a new will or rewrite an existing one, then call Williams & Williams Will Writing Solicitors on... So what's going on there? I'd suggest naturally you want to lift write, new will, and rewrite, and existing, because they're all new pieces of information. Yeah? So if you want us to write a new will, rewrite an existing one, but you're not going to be lifting one. Rewrite an existing one. No, that sounds odd, doesn't it? That sounds wrong. Why? Because one is a synonym for will. We've already said will. So it's old information. Remember old information from a few weeks ago? Yeah, one of the foundations to intonation. And you've also got some balancing words there. You've got write, rewrite, new will, and existing will. So they contrast with one another as well. So even in just half a sentence there, you've still got quite a bit going on as far as intonation goes. So if you want us to write a new will or rewrite an existing one, then call Williams & Williams Will Writing Solicitors on... Now, something interesting went on there. Did you spot it? One of those words was mispronounced. Or rather, misintoned. Did you spot which one it was? Oh, I bet you didn't. Let me say it again. So, if you want us to write a new will or rewrite an existing one, then What is going on? Wouldn't you normally say, oh, I've got to rewrite it? You would put the emphasis, the intonation, on the second part of that word, wouldn't you? Oh, it needs a rewrite. But in this case, we've put it on the re. You automatically and correctly colour the re of rewrite almost more than any other word or syllable there. And as I say, that's despite us usually putting the weight on the right. Try that other way with the colour on right, and you'll hear that it just sounds plain wrong. Let's give it a go. So, if you want us to write a new will or rewrite an existing one, oh, no, that doesn't sound right, does it? And that's because the context of the contrast here is between drafting an original will and amending an existing one. Hopefully that's clear. Any problems? Oh, hit me up on Twitter. I'm Tweeter Stewart, TWEERSTEWART, and we've got some more examples of purposeful misintonation tomorrow as Get a Better Broadcast podcast and video voice continues. From London, I'm Peter Stewart.